Hello, my name is Dakota G, and today I'm presenting my list of the top 10 people most responsible for or directly impacted by HeLa cells. Number 10, Richard Nixon. When he launched his war against cancer that both America and Russia would cooperate in, Russia sent cells to America to aid in their research. These cells, however, were found to have been contaminated by HeLa, which caused much confusion and misunderstanding. This caused both countries to have increased hostility towards each other. Number 9, John Moore. After having his tissue samples sold commercially behind his back and patented as Mo cells, Moore filed a lawsuit against UCLA Medical Center in 1988. This case, known as Moore versus Regents of the University of California, was very important in developing today's medical ethics regarding patient samples. In his argument, Moore used the story of Henrietta's cells to explain how what they were doing was unjust. However, the result of the case was Moore not receiving any financial compensations for the selling of his cells. Number 8. Harris and Watkins. These two men were the first to create animal-human hybrids by fusing the mouse cells with HeLa cells. Though these experiments were dreaded by the public at the time for future implications that they may have, they have greatly improved all scientists' knowledge of genome maps. Number 7. Theodore Puck and Philip Marcus. Puck and Marcus worked together to create the world's first cloned cells. In 1955, they successfully cloned a HeLa cell. Number 6. Jonas Salk. Jonas Salk is famous for being the first man to develop a polio vaccine. The creation of this vaccine would not have been possible without HeLa cells, which were found to be very sensitive to the polio virus. With polio being one of America's greatest fears at the time, Jonas Salk was no doubt one of the people most responsible for the development of HeLa. Number 5. George Guy. George Guy was a doctor at Johns Hopkins Hospital when Henrietta's cervix samples were taken. Guy was the man to discover the immortal nature of Henrietta's cells, and he also gave away the HeLa cells for other scientists for free, which makes him very responsible for the development of the HeLa cells. If it weren't for George Guy, HeLa cells would have never been discovered and utilized by scientists across the world. Number 4. Greg Morin. In the 1980s, it was discovered that some animals had an enzyme called telomerase which prevents cells from degrading. In 1989, scientist Greg Morin hypothesized that this enzyme could be isolated in the human body. In 1996, he was proven right when scientists found telomerase in human embryos. Number 3. Stanley Gartler. In 1967, Gartler was the first man to expose the major cross-contamination problem posed by HeLa. Due to HeLa's invasive nature and rapid growth, many cell lines that were originally thought to be unique were infected by HeLa. This information was not accepted at first due to the large amount of data that would have to be considered invalid by many hardworking scientists. Though large amounts of data were discarded, this was ultimately an advancement for science. Number 2. Harold Zerhausen. Hausen found that HeLa contained strains of HPV-18, a virus that was responsible for causing cervical cancer in women. He discovered that the virus worked by inserting its DNA into cells and turning off the gene that suppresses cancerous tumor growth. Scientists of today use that information to develop vaccines for HPV, which reduce the chance of HPV infection and growth by nearly 66%. Number 1. Henrietta Lacks. Henrietta was directly responsible for the development of HeLa cells because she was the one who originally produced the cells. Henrietta was admitted into Johns Hopkins Hospital in 1951, where tissue samples from her cervix were taken. These cancerous cells were unlike any other seen before and had the ability to reproduce indefinitely. Because these cells were immortal, they were ideal for research on cells that would not otherwise be possible with normal cells. This marks the end of my top 10 video. Thank you very much for watching.